Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandy Broadwell, and today we're going to talk about my priority reads for the spring. So all of the books that I hope to read in March, April, and May. Over the last year or so, I've been averaging about 4.5 books per month. So I have 15 books to talk to you about today, about 5 books per month. As always, my TBR is a little bit hopes and dreams. I like to leave a little bit of flexibility, so I won't necessarily get to all the books that I talk about today, but there's a good chance I'm going to get to most of them. First up in March is a book that I did not select for myself. I am a part of a book club with my family, and it was my husband's turn to pick a book, and he chose Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brian. So this will be the very first book that I read in March. Master and Commander, as many of you probably know, was adapted into a movie with Russell Crowe many years ago, and it was an incredible movie. My husband has read the entire series. There's like 20 something books, I think, and he swears that they're all fantastic. This is a historical fiction about sailing the seas in the English colonial days, I believe, and what happens to the crew of this one ship. So I am really looking forward to this. I love seafaring adventures, and I know the movie was fantastic, and the fact that my husband recommends them so highly means I'm gonna have a really good time. My next 3 books that I need to read in March are the last 3 squares that I need to complete my Reddit fantasy bingo. For those of you that don't know, Reddit does a fantasy bingo every year, and it runs from April 1st through March 31st. So I absolutely have to read these books in March or I will not complete my bingo card. First up for that was supposed to read a book in an epistolary format. So a book that's written through letters or newspaper articles or mixed media of some kind. And for that, I've chosen World War Z. This is an oral history of the zombie war. This also had a movie adaptation with Brad Pitt several years ago, but I've heard that the movie is absolutely nothing like the book. Like they just stole the name alone, basically. So I really don't know what to expect from this, but I've heard it's a really interesting take on a zombie apocalypse story, and I'm always intrigued by unique, fresh ideas when it comes to a story that feels a little played out. So that'll be the first one for Reddit Bingo. The next one was to read a self-published book, and I'm cheating a little bit on this one because there is a book I've heard a lot about called There Is No Anti-Memetics Division by Quantum. And this book was originally self-published and then has now been picked up by a traditional publisher and has really taken off. And to me, it's always really intriguing when a self-published book becomes so popular that the publishing industry can't not get their hands on it. And so I know that is definitely a cheat for this square, but I do have another self-published book, which is the next one I'm going to talk about. So I allowed myself a little bit of leeway on that one just because I'm so intrigued to find out what all the hype is around There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. And then my third and final book for Reddit Fantasy Bingo is, I can't remember the exact name of the square, but it's like underhyped or lesser known. The requirements are that this book has to have less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. And so my pick for that is By Blood, by Salt by J.L. Odom. This book actually won the SPFBO, which is like a self-published fantasy book competition every year that is hosted by Mark Lawrence. And I know that Mark Lawrence himself said it was one of his favorite books ever submitted to the SPFBO, and I know Tori Tekken has read it and rated it really, really highly. So I'm intrigued to try out this self-published book. I actually saw a copy of it at my local library recently, and so that's what inspired me to pick it for this square. The final book for the month of March, hopefully, is my first ever book of the month. I have never been a subscriber of Book of the Month. Of course, everyone on the bookish internet knows what Book of the Month is. It's a subscription service, and the first book is only $10, and then all the books after that are $17. But that's for brand new hardcover releases. So brand new hardcover releases at the bookstore are usually $30. So it's a really good deal. And if you don't like the books that they have on offer that month, you can skip it and use your credit, the following months. I'm not sponsored by Book of the Month. I'm just explaining it in case you, for some reason, haven't heard of it. But so this is my first ever Book of the Month selection. So I'm sure at some point I will do a video where I talk about my experience with Book of the Month and whether I think it is worth it. But the reason I finally decided to subscribe after years of hearing about it is because there is a new release that I was really excited about that I put in a hold for at the library, and the wait was like multiple months long, and I didn't want to wait that long. And I saw it was a Book of the Month selection this month. So my Book of the Month selection is Agnes Albert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. Heather Fawcett is the author of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and that trilogy, and I really loved that trilogy. I thought it was really heartwarming and sweet, and had just a lot of tropes that I love in it. And this is a fantasy book about cats. And that's really all I need to know. I am a cat person, and it's an author I love. I do love all of the sweet little cats on the cover here and on the back as well. I believe this is about a woman who runs a cat shelter, and she has to move into a new place, has to get a new landlord, and apparently the landlord is somewhat devious and potentially evil. So intrigued to see how that's going to play out. Then for April, one of my most anticipated releases of the year, The Faith of Beasts by James S.A. Corey. I'm really hoping I can get my hands on this as soon as it comes out. This is the sequel to The Mercy of Gods. So The Faith of Beasts is the second book in the Captives War trilogy. I really love the first book. It's about an alien invasion and this captured group of scientists who are forced to work in this alien laboratory and compete for their lives essentially against other alien species in the same position. So really intriguing, the dynamics between the crew and how they interact with each other after realizing they might never see their homeworld or any other humans again is just so well done. Then in April, I will be continuing with my favorite series right now, which is of course Dungeon Crawler Carl. The next book for me is book number 5, which is The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Denman. I did receive books 5 through 7 for Christmas this year, so I'm trying to pace myself because these books are so much fun and I always devour them very quickly. And there is an 8th book coming out over the summer, and I'm just trying to make it last as long into this year as I can. So I'm trying to only read one every other month at the moment, so that I don't have to end it. But I've heard from many people on the internet that this is their favorite book in the series, and the events of books 1 through 4 have definitely been building to this level of the dungeon. So if you're unfamiliar, Dungeon Crawler Carl is the story of an alien invasion that basically destroys Earth for the most part and turns it into a multi-level dungeon. The survivors are forced into the dungeon and forced to kind of fight it out gladiator style against all of these different obstacles and mobs and puzzles and work their way down to the lower floors and not die. So this follows Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, who is absolutely precious and the highlight of the series for me personally. Then I need to read at least 6 classics this year to stay on my trajectory to read 40 classics before I turn 40. And so for April, I'm planning to read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is a coming-of-age story. I really don't know very much about it, but obviously it's a classic. I hope that I get to fall in love with it and see why it is such an appreciated work. Then my last 2 books for the month of April will be continuations of series that I started over the winter. The first one being Ancillary Sword by Anne Leckie. I read Ancillary Justice, which was book number 1 in this Imperial Ratch trilogy. Imperial Ratch. I always say that wrong. Ancillary Justice was following the story of Breck, who is an ancillary. And ancillaries are like human bodies with robotic AI type minds that are part of a starship. And so it's like the starship inhabits human bodies so that it can take care of its crew and do maintenance on its own ship and that sort of thing. And Breck was separated from its starship when the starship was destroyed. And so now it is just a lone ancillary and trying to hunt down a legendary weapon that will let it kill the immortal emperor. That's the plot of the first book. So I'm very intrigued to see where the second book in the series is going to go and what's going to happen next. And then the second continuation of series that I'm tackling in April is book 2 of Hyperion Cantos, which is called The Fall of Hyperion. This is books 1 and 2 in a kind of compendium. So I've already read the first book, which was just called Hyperion. And again, The Fall of Hyperion is book number 2. I really loved the first book. It was so beautifully written. It tackled such mind-bending concepts. It's the story of this legendary place called the Time Tombs on this one planet in the Empire. And time moves backwards in this place, and no one can really explain why. And there is a legendary creature slash god that lives in this region that kills anyone who tries to approach the Time Tombs. And there is a church that has grown up around this creature called the Shrike, and they recruit 7 pilgrims to go to the Time Tombs at its legendary prophesized opening. And so it is the story of these 7 pilgrims who are not worshipers in the Church of the Shrike, and they don't understand why they've been selected, but they travel to the Time Tombs together, and it's about them sharing their life story and why they think they might have been selected, what their history is with the Time Tombs and the Church of the Shrike, so that they can try and share information as much as they can and hopefully learn something from each other that will keep them from being killed by the Shrike when they enter the tombs. The first book was just basically all of their stories as they get to the tombs, and like right as they get to the tombs, the book ends. So I'm very, very intrigued to see what's going to happen now that they're finally there. Then May is absolutely stacked with new releases that I am absolutely stoked for. So there's 4 of the 5 books that I'm hoping to read in May are new releases. So really crossing my fingers I can get my hands on all of them in the month of May. But if not, then obviously some of these will roll over into my summer TBR. But 2 of these are, I would say, top 3 to 5 releases of the year. So first up, we have A Long and Speaking Silence by Mivo. This is book 7 or 8 in the Singing Hills cycle. The first book in that series is The Empress of Salt and Fortune, and I've really enjoyed all of these books. They're novellas, so they're quick and easy reads, and they follow this cleric named Chi who has a talking bird companion, and their job basically is a historian and a storyteller, a story collector. They travel around and listen to people's stories and record them for their abbey's like archive, basically. Some of them are kind of cozy, some of them are kind of mysterious, some of them have a definite like horror tinge to them. They're all very different and very fun. Then we also have another novella coming out in May, which is Platform Decay, the newest book in the Murderbot series. This is also, I think, the 7th or 8th novella in the series. And if you haven't heard of Murderbot, Murderbot is a security robot that has a lot of social anxiety and doesn't like killing people, doesn't really like doing its job. It just wants to like chill out and watch its soap operas that it has downloaded. But it has found family along the way, and it follows it on these various missions to try and protect the people that it has developed a good relationship with. I do think some of this series has gotten a little stale for me, so I'm hoping that the new one can freshen it up a little bit. Next 2 are the 2 new releases that I am absolutely massively stoked for, and the first one of those is The Last Contract of Asako by Fonda Lee. This is Fonda Lee's first sci-fi release. She is of course the author of the Green Bone Saga, which is the Jade City series, and I had a really interesting time with that series. It was super unique. The character study of it all and the family that it follows was absolutely fascinating, and the 3rd book in that series really kind of transformed my experience with the first 2 books, which I gave the first 2 books I think around 4 stars, and then the 5th book just absolutely had me sobbing at the end, and I was like, oh my gosh, like new favorite series. So I'm really hoping that I can capture some of that with her new sci-fi book, which I believe is about like a samurai on the edge of retirement that gets pulled in for one last contract sort of deal, and samurai in space, like I'm on board. And the final new release that I am on the edge of my seat waiting for is The Tapestry of Fate by Shannon Chakraborty. This is book 2 of the Amina al-Sarafi series. I absolutely loved The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, book number 1. I absolutely loved the Devabad trilogy by Shannon Chakraborty. Shannon Chakraborty is just one of my favorite authors, and Amina al-Sarafi is a semi-retired lady pirate that, of course, similar to the previous book, gets pulled back into piracy for like one last gig to save the family member of one of her former crewmates. And the setup for where the rest of the series is going to go that happened in book 1 has me so stoked to continue with Amina's story. And the final book that I'm going to talk about today, book number 15 for the spring that I hope to tackle, is actually a reread, but I really would like to reread Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, because the movie is going to be coming out in theaters this spring, and I really loved this the first time that I read it, and I would really like to have a refresher before I go to the theaters and see kind of what my thoughts are compared to the book of the new movie, and also just hopefully get to enjoy the movie regardless of how close or not close it is going to be to the book. But I'm very hopeful and excited for that new release. So that's it. Those are the 15 books that I hope to tackle this spring. Let me know down in the comments below what books you're most looking forward to reading over the next 3 months, or what new releases you're most excited about. I would love to hear about it in the comments below, and hopefully add your books also to my own TBR. Thanks so much for hanging out and tuning in for a little bit today. As always, please be kind, read more books, and hit the subscribe button below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you again soon.